Hey Monster Hunters, it's Malex, and I have another DM tip for you to help elevate your dungeon mastering game. So what I have here is a dungeon random encounter chart. What this is it helps create some sort of urgency while exploring a dungeon. It makes it so the players just can't sleep in a dungeon. It actually makes the dungeon feel like a more dangerous place. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing I want to tell you is this chart works off a 2 die 8 roll. So basically you roll 2 die 8, you add them together, and that's your result. So the results are 2 through 16. Alright, and it creates a nice bell curve of probability, so the things in the center are more likely to happen than the things at the end. Alright, and looking at this, I want to point out the very first thing. Numbers 8, 9, and 10, nothing happens when you roll those numbers, or when your party rolls those numbers. That gives you a 22 out of 64 chance of nothing happening, or roughly 34%. And that's kind of like where you want to be when you make a random encounter chart. A third of the time, nothing should happen. Now you go through and look at all this other stuff. Not all of these rolls are going to be a monster coming and fighting them. No, you want it to be kind of random. You want it to have different things happen. You want something to make the dungeon feel alive. So let's go and start at number 2. Now, one of the big things for me when I'm making a random encounter chart is you want it to feel random. If you have all the bad stuff happening at low levels, at low numbers, then your party is going to be worried whenever they roll a poor number. So you want to kind of mix it up. That's why when you roll double ones, you roll a 2, I actually have treasure. The players find some significant amount of treasure that's going to help them in the dungeon. There's only a 1 in 64 chance of this happening, and 1 in 64 is roughly 2%. It's actually 1.5%, 1.6%. So there's a very low chance of them finding treasure, but I think it's a pretty good reward. And then 3, it's magical effect. This can be good, this can be bad. Basically, I have a little subchart that you roll die 4 on, and it can be helpful, harmful, an item, or a nexus. And that can mean many different things to you. Nexus could be a connection to another plane. It could be something surging out. So this could be a potential monster encounter. This could be a potential healing. And it just kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility about what happens. It also tells you a little bit about the area. To me, dungeons are very magical. That's why they kind of have all these hosts. There's a reason that creatures are living in a dungeon. Alright. Next, number 4, another adventurer. So often we forget that there's other people living in our world. At 4, that gives us a 3 out of 34 chance. That's going to be like roughly 5%. There's a roughly 5%, so like kind of like a die 20 roll, that there's someone going to be exploring. They're going to run across them. And again, we can use a die 4 to kind of determine what that person's motives is. Are they able-bodied? Are they hurt? Are they greedy? Are they helpful? Is this person going to want to get rid of the party, or they want to help the party, or do they need help? So that's a great way to make the players realize, oh, should we be exploring this dungeon? Are we going to make someone upset by taking all the loot that's in this dungeon? And because you're rolling this every 10 minutes, as they travel or as they search, it's very possible that the players are searching a room for something and then an adventurer walks in on them. Alright, number 5, trapped. Particularly creature-made traps. So this is basically like there's something living in here and they're setting traps. Why are they setting traps? This is going to be your scythe wall traps, your bear traps. Those are the kind of traps that are going to be affected here. Number 6, inhabitants number 2. This is the second most chance of inhabitants. This is the second largest population of inhabitants in the dungeon. So when you're making your dungeon, make sure you have 3 factions. And this is the second of the factions that exists in here. So again, depending on how you rolled this dungeon, they can be helpful, they can be harmful, but it's some sort of encounter with one group of the inhabitants of this dungeon. Alright, number 7, natural trap. Alright, so natural trap is like lava flows, cave-ins, pitfall traps, floods, any of those sorts of things that a human could not do on purpose. I mean, they could do something, maybe you unblock a dam and cause a flood, but this often closes off a particular area of location. So you need to make sure that on your map you mark down that there was some sort of natural trap that happened here. In my campaign, one of the natural traps was lava just fell through the ceiling and sealed off a path. So now the party can't find out what's beyond that path. So that creates another sense of urgency. And it also can keep players from going off on their own. Alright, like I mentioned before, 8, 9, and 10 are nothing. We got 33% chance that nothing happens. So it is possible for players to sleep in a dungeon, but they would need to roll pretty well, lots of 9s, 10s, and 8s, as well as like other positive things, maybe like the treasure, and there's a few more coming up. So now number 11, the thing that's most likely to happen besides traps and nothing, and that's your main inhabitant of the dungeon. So if you're in a goblin warrens, this is going to be your goblins. If you're in like a spider nest, this is going to be the spiders. So it is going to be the most common monster in your dungeon, and that's to show by why it's so close to the center. Next, evidence of battle. So I hate surprising my party members with, my party players with things that they had nothing against. So I do give them a chance to roll, and it's a pretty high chance. 12 is pretty close to the center, so they have a good chance. There's a pretty good chance that they'll come across this evidence. It's tied for the third most common thing after nothing, natural traps, and the first inhabitants. And the first inhabitants are like, they should know what the main inhabitants of the dungeon are when they're going into the dungeon. If they don't have any, they didn't do any research, and that's kind of on them. Natural traps, again, that's something that they should know beforehand. So evidence of battle can give them clues into the other inhabitants. So maybe they see goblin weapons next to elven weapons. So maybe they know that there's elves in the goblin warrens too. Maybe they see spider legs and maybe some dwarf weapons, so they can learn that there's dwarves and spiders. But this is a great time to give some lore to your party members through someone who's not an NPC. And then after that, we have the third group. I like to have 3 factions in a dungeon. One can be positive, one can be negative, and one can be swayed either way. Or they can all be negative. I mean, that is a thing to do. Like, maybe they've learned to cohabit and they don't like outsiders coming in. Alright, next, number 14, clues about the area. So this can be another lore dump. This can kind of go into evidence of battle, but this is also more flexible. This could be why there's magic here. This could lead us into any number of things. Why it's important, what magical items at the end, if there's anything interesting about it. This could be a journal, this could be a magical item. This is kind of like a little bit of a catch-all for the players to kind of see. Number 15, our penultimate one, is non-faction monsters. Sometimes another monster just kind of wanders in, and you want to have a dice roll for that. So it's a pretty low chance that one of the non-factions is in here, but it is one thing that you can add. And lastly, number 16, 1 out of 64 is the boss. So obviously you're going to have a boss room where you want your players to fight the boss, but having the chance for the players to run into the boss when they're not ready can add a great deal of tension. In my own personal campaign, that actually happened while they were about halfway through the dungeon, and they had nothing left. They didn't have any spells left, they didn't have any key points left, they had barely any hit points, and they went up against the boss and they ran away after 2 rounds because they realized they could not win. But because they survived, that created a great amount of tension, and the players started making plans about what could happen and how to face it. Having a random encounter for the boss really adds a good amount of tension. And if your players know that they have a random chance of encountering the boss, that's going to make them on their guard. It's going to make them play carefully. And sometimes having imbalanced gameplay, like having things not worked out so that they have the greatest advantages possible, adds a great amount of skill and tension and excitement to the game, knowing that things can go wrong with just one bad roll. That's why we love automatic failures on dice rolls. That's why we like automatic successes on dice rolls. Just that randomness adds a great amount of excitement, and it also gives players like an excuse for, like, if they fail, like, okay, sometimes we just get unlucky. That's why, if you want to know a little bit about game design, that's why like a lot of games like Fortnite, Magic the Gathering are really popular, because there's an element of luck into it, where the new players who don't know what to do can outshine the veteran players once in a while. So I hope you enjoyed this dungeon random encounter chart. I think it's one of the best things I've created. Just remember to roll every 10 minutes while the players are exploring. Figure out how far they can travel in 10 minutes. Remember, it takes, if they take 20 on searching, they can only search a 10-foot square, and that takes 10 minutes. That's kind of it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and share with your friends. Leave a comment down below if you want me to go over something, and I'll see you guys next time. Keep rolling.